I'm Tim.
I'm Rob.
And this is Constant Variables. We're going to be talking about 10 predictions that we have. Is it 10?
It's 9.
9 predictions that we have for mobile technology going into the new year.
It's really cool and really fun, so make sure you tune in.
Welcome to Constant Variables, a podcast where we take a non-technical look at mobile app development. I'm Tim Bornholt.
And I'm Rob Bentley. I'm back.
Let's get nerdy. So yes, Rob is back. Hi, Rob.
It's nice to be a guest on the podcast of the company that I run, so kind of fun sometimes.
Well, after I ran you out of town on a rail because I didn't want you hosting the show anymore,
Yeah.
we decided to bring you back. So
yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, right. Today on the show, we're going to talk about 9 trends that we see continuing through 2020. So as we record this, it is December 4th, 2019, and we are going to peer into the future, into Rob's crystal ball, and figure out what is going to happen with this crazy mobile tech stuff going forward in the new year.
Well, first thing we're looking at is a good one for us. Businesses are going to spend more money on apps, but specifically internal software tools.
Yeah, this is something we've talked about actually with these predictions in the past, and lo and behold, it's panned out. I think more and more companies are starting to see the value of having custom mobile software for their business, especially when it comes to their processes. And it's not so much about making money, it's about saving money and saving time with their employees. So I really do see this as a growing trend in 2020 is, as people are worried about the recession and whatnot, a good way to save money is by finding ways to use technology to make jobs go quicker.
Right. I mean, businesses invest in themselves all the time, but those trends are going to just kind of go towards technology more now than ever.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Well, it's a solid first prediction.
Yes, right.
Let's move on to prediction number 2. So NFC. What is NFC, Rob?
Near field communication.
All right, number 3.
Yeah. So for everyone who doesn't understand that right away, that's the thing when you pay for something at the grocery store, when you put your phone next to the credit card reader, it does the little ding and then your money goes through.
You remember like when that technology first came out and everyone was talking about like bumping phones?
Yeah.
That was like a big thing. And you'd be like, just bump my phone and now you've got my contact info.
Right. Yeah. We could be so cool high-fiving our phones everywhere.
But it's kind of crazy though. Like I took a vacation in Canada a couple months ago, and literally every place I went to, they like bumped it. Like they all had every restaurant, every place I went, they had these like handheld machines that were like the credit card readers, and you would just hold your phone up to it and bump it, and that was it. It's like you like the waiters didn't come around with like the little black envelopes with the slips in them. Like you just bumped it, and it's like that's Canada. Like why are they doing it in Canada and not here in the US, I think that as those technology standards improve and as more and more people here are getting devices that have the NFC technology built into it, like pretty much any iPhone for the last, 4 or 5 years
Something
has
like
that built into it.
Yeah.
If you have an Apple Watch or any other like Android Wear watch or a lot of Android devices too, like they all have NFC, and I think we're going to see a lot more applications of that being used this year.
Especially since the smartphone operating systems came out with Apple Pay and Google Pay and Samsung Pay, which makes it really slick to have your payment information stored securely. You're going to start seeing this a lot more now that people have wind of it. And it's fun to use too. Like it's way faster than actually using a card.
Oh yeah. And I think too, one thing with this technology is I wonder how it's going to be applied, not necessarily in like the financial sense, but like we don't, because we're not going to have like ID badges to get into our office, but
we should.
Yeah, we should. I do think though that there's a lot of companies that do have that requirement, and that's something that, instead of having a badge that you have to carry around all the time, we all have our phone and our watches on us all the time. That technology could easily be turned into a mobile app that then replaces the need for an ID card. It's like, what's more likely to get stolen, like a little plastic card that you don't think about until you leave your car, or your phone, like I think that it's just probably going to be more prevalent as we go forward here, that as these devices are more capable, we're going to see them in more applications where it just replaces the need to carry around like a wallet with all these cards in it.
Yeah, you could open a bank vault like anything.
Turn off the lasers inside the bank vault. Yeah.
The phones that you carry in your pocket are going to start bending.
Yeah. And they already are. There's already a few out there on the market that are bendable. Like most notably, Motorola came out with a Razr. It was basically like to capture everyone's nostalgia, but it's pretty cool. Like the technology is really sweet. Like you can actually like you're bending a piece of paper, you can like bend your screen, and then when you open it up, it expands out and it just works.
Yeah, I haven't personally used one yet, but I'd be curious to see how it works and kind of how it feels.
Yeah, I haven't used it either, but I think probably for good reason. Like I think most of the reviews that have come back in have said, like, you know, after a few thousand times of opening the device and bending it, there's some bubbling that occurs on the hinges. So, you know, I think it's still kind of early days for this tech, but 2020, I mean, there's already products on the market in 2019 that do this. So I wonder how much more prevalent it's going to be in 2020 and where you're going to see bendable technology, you know, play out in other parts of the space.
Right. And it doesn't necessarily have to be like a smartphone or a tablet either. It could be clothing or furniture or walls or, you know, what have you. It'd be interesting to see, now that this technology exists, how it's going to grow and what areas it's going to spread to.
Yeah, it's just it's so cool to think of, like, back when, like, I was starting doing web development, you know, like in the mid 90s, it's like you have a monitor that's like glass is like 3 inches thick and it's like the resolution is so awful on it. And now we go to the point where it's like I can literally bend like a piece of glass and have it fit in my pocket, and it's like crazy thin and bendable. And just in general, it's really cool being part of like technology and seeing how it grows.
Yeah, totally. Speaking of the prevalence of devices and how they're becoming different and growing, another trend we're going to see is a big push towards accessibility.
Yeah, and I think there was a lot in 2019 that helped drive this, but with all those lawsuits that have been happening with bigger companies that have apps that aren't accessible to people with disabilities, I think it's going to be more and more on people's minds in 2020 to make apps that are just usable by everybody.
Right. And we'll probably see the larger companies kind of spearheading this effort because they're probably going to be the targets of, you know, further lawsuits with people not able to use their platform because of accessibility reasons. So that's probably who's going to start it. But we should be seeing it kind of trickle down and become more prevalent everywhere with mobile applications.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I think the push towards accessibility in general, it's like the more accessible you can make an app, it's almost like it's win-win for everybody because it's easier for you to use as well. Like we've worked on some apps that when we got initially, like when we were building them out, the interfaces were pretty complicated and like at me as a, like when we were building them, it's like we're in our mid 20s with full capabilities, you know, and it's like I was confused as to how this thing would work. And then it's like as accessibility requirements come in, it's like, okay, well, we have to simplify it. And it's like, oh, this app is actually like easier to use now and makes more sense to everybody. So it's like, because we're focusing on accessibility, it's just nice that it's like it's not just for people that have disabilities. It's like everyone benefits with a focus on accessibilities, especially within mobile apps.
Yeah, it's really good for design trends too.
Yeah.
Just making it easy for everyone to use.
Yeah. If you turn on voiceover and just see what it's like for somebody that has a disability, it's like you can see really quick which apps care about accessibility and which apps don't. And it's like, I think as you get older, it's like we're going to be using more and more of these capabilities. So it's just nice to see that. I think we're going to see a bigger push of developers paying attention to that as we go forward.
Yeah, it's too bad it wasn't a bigger push earlier, since accessibility has been, especially iOS, a part of that since the beginning. Like there were accessibility features baked in.
Oh yeah. I really don't think it's like the fault of Apple.
No,
I think it's really more on the like Apple's given us these tools since, like you said, since the beginning, and they've constantly evolved. And it's crazy. Like if you go back and watch keynotes, it's like some of their keynotes, like it's like they give them like 2 seconds of like, oh, and by the way, here's this voiceover thing. And then they move on to like some other, like, you know, Ping, like their music social network that they built. It's like they'll spend like 40 minutes talking about that. But it's like this revolutionary like accessibility feature. It's like here it is, developers, go take advantage of it. And like everyone's just kind of like, well, out of sight, out of mind. And then all of a sudden now it's like, oh, there's like this whole suite of things we can do to make apps more accessible. And I think, it's nice that we can start driving towards that.
Well, it's definitely a trend now too, because the app store is maturing and apps themselves are. When you're first developing it, it's hard enough to just get something working in the first place without thinking of, other things. And now that these apps are out there, they're doing their jobs, they've scaled, they're pretty much bug free. Now it's like good to start looking into other things, how you can make it accessible to everyone.
Oh yeah. And you can almost use accessibility as a differentiator for your app. Because if an app that is accessible to everyone, as opposed to an app where it looks really good but might not be easy to use by everybody, it's a differentiator that'll get you that much more market share.
Yeah, exactly.
This next one is something that's been in the works for a while, but I think this year is where we'll actually start to see some widespread adoption of it, and that would be 5G.
Yeah, so with the speeds of mobile networks getting faster, this is going to continue the paradigm of people accessing the internet more through phones than actual like desktop or laptop computers, especially in third world countries and less developed areas of the world.
Yeah. And just a quick, a lot of people probably hear 5G and just, think it's like this big marketing thing and don't really understand what it means. I thought it might be good to just quick touch on the evolution. So the G in 5G is generation. And so this is the 5th generation of wireless technologies that our cell phones can use. So, 1G was before the iPhone came out, and that was what kind of enabled, do you remember really early on web, WAP technology, and it was all text based, and that's what allowed MMS pictures and things to be sent over text messages. That's 1G. And then 2G was when the iPhone came out. That's what they first used, and it probably better known as the Edge network. And that was what kind of, you can equate it to dial-up modems way back in the day. It was you could get the internet and you could get websites and load them, but it took quite a while for things to load.
Well, and that was before the iPhone even did picture messaging and their SMS app, their main one.
Right. Yeah. It was very, very early days with that. And then 3G came along, which enabled more things like Uber, and that really helped spread the proliferation of mobile apps, is because we could actually connect to a network and use somewhat decent speeds. And then 4G is where we're at right now, otherwise known as LTE. And I think where we're at now, it's we got pretty decent coverage. And honestly, sometimes in my house, if I'm having issues with my home network, it's I'll very frequently get off Wi-Fi and use 4G because it's faster than what I get with my wireless router.
Oh, I do the same thing.
Yeah.
It's almost just more reliable and works better.
So it's crazy to think of where 4G to 5G is, but 5G is even faster. It's going to be I can't remember the last time I looked it up, but I think it's nearing gigabit speeds, which is just as fast as if you had fiber going into your house. So I'm not sure what dark magic they're using to achieve this, but I think it's just going to, like Rob said, the thing I've been really thinking about, I have family out in rural Wisconsin, and when you are out there, if you're in the middle of a field working, right now, even with 4G, it's they don't have coverage out there, but with 5G and the big push for it, it's that's going to enable people in hard to reach places for getting fiber and really fast internet. It's you can plug in 5G and everybody is connected, and that's just going to enable so many more people to be connected, and the applications that we can build are going to be so much more interesting. I don't even know, do you even know what 5G is going to enable in terms of applications for people?
I almost just more see it as solving the problems of, well, I couldn't connect, or I don't know if it'll necessarily, it probably will enable more things and people will figure that out. That's not
oh yeah,
I
for
know
sure.
nothing about all that, but
well, it's because it's interesting. 3G enabled Uber and those types of apps to just exist in general, and then 4G has really more enabled us as a culture to have more 4K video streams and that kind of a thing. So it's just interesting to see what's I never want to be the guy like when Bill Gates was famously said who needs more than 8 kilobytes of memory in their computer,
Yeah.
I don't want to be the guy that's well, 4G is enough, we don't need to move forward. But it's just interesting to think of what is that actually going to enable for us.
I'm sure it'll enable a lot. The more data you can send faster, the more things you can do. possibly even when you're on your yacht in the middle of the ocean, you can watch YouTube. So
It's about time.
yes.
Well, which yacht? That's the real question.
I know.
I have many. Which leads perfectly into our next topic, right? GDPR.
Yeah. So I actually can't even remember. I'm so used to just saying the acronym. I can't remember what it stands for.
I think it's like General Data Privacy Regulations.
Something like that. It's something the EU introduced to help basically protect its citizens and data privacy. So the main things around this is it is requiring apps to let users permanently totally delete their user information, be able to gather what data is being sent around about them, what's being stored about them, all these kind of things. And there's huge fines if you don't comply with it.
Yeah, and I think the GDPR went into effect like 2 years ago, I want to say.
Yeah, maybe a year and a half, but
I can't remember what,
right.
like, it was when we all were getting like 1,000 emails that were like, hey, our privacy policy's updated. Like that was specifically because of the GDPR. The reason I wanted to bring it up as a trend for 2020 is that there's this push in California is pretty much the most progressive state when it comes to technology and like regulating the behaviors around that, which makes sense because that's where Silicon Valley is. But they introduced the California Consumer Privacy Act of 2018. That's the CCPA. And that is, I think the regulations for that start to go into effect in 2020, I think in January 2020. So you're going to start to see kind of where we had a big push for GDPR in Europe. A lot of like people I've talked to were like, well, GDPR is for like European citizens, and the odds of a European citizen using my app are pretty low. So, we're kind of going to just, pass the buck or not worry about it until it becomes a problem or we get international. Well, those regulations from Europe are now coming to America, and the odds of maybe you having like, a Ukrainian using your app are slow, but the odds of you having a Californian use your app are relatively high. So this is just another thing that as app owners, we're going to have to worry about, and you're going to see some ramifications and hopefully good things as a result. Like, I don't know what you think about GDPR, but as I think personally as a citizen, I love it. And as an app developer, I think it really helps level the playing field against people that do, kind of jerk things with people's data.
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of apps out there that are only about collecting and selling user data, which isn't really what we're in it for.
Right.
So it doesn't bother me. I think it's a great thing.
Yeah, I think it just, if anything, like I said, just gets rid of the scuzzballs.
Right. So guess what else? The Internet of Things is going to continue to grow.
Surprise, surprise.
No one saw that one coming.
Well, right. Well, I was like talking before we started recording about how it's like when people would like joke about smart toasters and like smart refrigerators and stuff, like as the technology was really early on in like 2014, 2015. But now that things are maturing and we have things like, Apple has HomeKit and there's like Alexa is connected to everything. And I just think that 2020 is it's just going to continue to grow. There's going to be more devices connected. I think more people are going to be comfortable connecting devices and finding, as soon as you can find one way to automate one little part of your life, you get the bug and you just start finding more and more things you can do to make your life like not massively better. Like it's not massively better to have my coffee maker start immediately when I wake up, but that's a nice thing to have. And it's like, we have this technology, we might as well use it.
Well, and it's going to start becoming standard too. I recently bought a townhome and the garage door opening system was out of date. So we had that upgraded, replaced. And my new garage door opener connects to Wi-Fi. I haven't personally connected it to the Wi-Fi, but it can do that. And it's not something I asked for. It's just what came with it.
Exactly. And I'm sure as you're like, getting more comfortable in your house, I'm sure like you'll experiment with that at some point and be like, let's see what happens when I connect my garage door up to it. And,
right. Yeah. It'd be, the whole thing is you can open your garage door with your phone, which is nice if you don't have the opener around or whatever. But
right. Well, I asked for Christmas this year, I asked for one of the kits that's like an aftermarket that turns your like garage door into like a smart garage door. And the reason I got it was because I forget to close my garage door at night all the time. And, I live in a pretty like secluded neighborhood. Like most people aren't going to like drive down and see my open garage, but it'd be nice if I'm in my bed that I like at 10 o'clock get a push notification to my phone that's like, hey, your garage door is still open. Do you want to close it? Because I'd be like, oh yeah, sweet. And then it's closed.
Hell yeah, I'll close it. Hell yeah.
Close that door.
Yeah.
Get it closed. Well, I guess we probably should have talked about this right after we talked about GDPR. That would have probably made more sense. That was good producing on my part.
Yeah.
But I think a trend that we're going to start seeing in 2020, as we've talked about on this show before, is I think people are going to become more aware of social media in general and like phone usage, and possibly start to curtail how much they use both of those things.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you are ever in line at a place like Caribou, no one knows what that is unless they live here, Starbucks or Chipotle, if you just kind of look around, everyone's head is down and they're all on Instagram or Facebook.
Yeah.
If you happen to look at their screens, which I, don't do. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't look at them.
But yeah, it's all just people standing there looking at Instagram, and it's crazy how many people just have no idea what's going on around them. And it's like every second people get to be on their phone, they are.
Yeah. And I find I'm like that too. And I've been really, especially now that I have 2 kids that are young, it's like, and my 3-year-old is starting to become more aware of like behaviors that I'm doing. And like, it's funny, like I'll watch her pick up, like we have like a kitchen that we have for her, and there's like a toy phone that's part of it, like a landline phone. And she'll pick it up and like look at it and just start like touching it. Mm-hmm. Like not even like, just like staring at it. Like that's how she plays, is like she'll sit and just stare at this like piece of plastic, and there's like nothing on it, but it's like really eye opening of like how often I'm just sitting and staring at my phone doing nothing where I could be interacting with my 3-year-old,
Right.
So
yeah.
I think more and more people are starting to, become aware of that habit, and I think are really going to try to find ways to curtail that behavior.
I went to I actually won a free massage that there was a drawing in a Chinese restaurant down the street from our office, and I entered it, and I was probably the only one who did, and that's why I won. It was actually a real legit massage place. Like, they at least branded themselves as their like kind of medical or whatever. I don't know. But I went there, and he said, this is something that's happening to me, because he asked, like, are you, in pain at all? And I said, well, yeah, sometimes my left arm hurts. And he said, yeah, it's a reason. We're seeing a lot of that now because everyone is holding a phone in front of their face. And as a result, their posture is leaning forward, being on computers and phones all the time. And so that's something that's happening to me, too. It's just kind of interesting.
Yeah. It's there's so much, like, this technology revolution has been so like widespread and sweeping and fast that most people, nobody has really like done any studies on any of this stuff of like long-term effects. And I would imagine this year, like, the iPhone's been out for over 10 years now. It's like, and we've had smart cell phones in general for like 20, so I don't know, we're probably going to start getting to the point now where people are just, I don't know, just getting sick of like being on my phone all the time. And like, social media just like, it's engineered to make you feel bad.
Yeah.
Just like, look how perfect everyone else's lives are. Why isn't my life perfect? And I don't know. It's just, I think there's a really good book I wanted to mention. It's by Cal Newport, who's he's a computer scientist. And it's a book called Digital Minimalism. So if you're like listening to us talk about this and are looking for ways to like get off of that and kind of kick the habit of smartphones, check out his book. And I have it like in my Amazon queue to read. But I've read a lot of like reviews of it, and everyone seems to really love it. And it all talks about like, how do you kick the habit of being on your phone all day? And I think it's just something that we should all be aware of, and especially going into the new year here.
Yeah, I'm definitely trying to be more aware of it and putting my phone away when I'm especially just playing a game.
Yeah.
Sitting at home. Like, why am I doing that?
It's kind of funny, like when you see like, doctors modeling behaviors, and it's like, well, if the doctor's not doing that, like when you think of like end of life things, it's like you don't ever see a doctor like sitting through like 3 years of like in a hospice, like back and forth, like in the hospital getting like all these treatments and things done for them. It's like when a doctor wants to be done, they're just like, put me in hospice, like let me be comfortable and pass peacefully. Mm-hmm. It's kind of funny with like technology, how like we're sitting here being the ones that program all of this stuff, and we're both like, we got to get off these phones.
Yeah, it's real.
So it's like, if you take anything away from this, like if the tech people are talking about being done with being on their phones, you should take a take a tip.
It's just all about balance. There's a point where it's too much. It can be very useful, very productive, help you in so many ways, but if you're not aware of it, it can also be harmful to you too.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's kind of the whole point of, I think the book is like, you have to be just conscious of what you do. And I think tools like Apple Screen Time, or like, I think Google has an equivalent too. We're both iOS people. So when we kind of just offhandedly mention Google, that's why, it's because we're both steeped in the iOS ecosystem. But I think like those tools that just make you aware of, like, you literally were on your phone on average 3 hours a day for the last week. And it's like 3 hours a day that I was staring at a piece of glass. And, sometimes it's like the 3 hours is like I'm out on a walk and I'm on a phone call. So it's like I'm not on my phone, but my phone is active because I'm doing something with it. But just going through and looking, like, how often was I on Instagram? Like, I spent 40 minutes of my day on there. Like, why? What was I doing?
My statistics are often skewed because I'll have my phone open developing all day. So it'll be like, you've been on your phone for 11 hours today. And I'll be like, well, I mean, yes, but no.
Right. And like, I think like that's probably something that we'll see with iOS 14 is probably more fine-grained detail with that screen time. Because I think being able to train the computer to know, like, this is a behavior that I want to be doing and this is a behavior I don't want to be doing. Like, being able to distinguish between the two would be useful.
Well, along the lines of me with my arm hurting, we're hopefully going to have a solution, maybe not tomorrow, but in the near to long future, with the advent of augmented reality becoming more and more of a thing.
Yeah. And it's to distinguish between augmented reality and virtual reality. It's like virtual reality would be if you have like an entire device that's like covering your entire senses and showing you like something that's completely not there. Where augmented reality would be, you can see everything as normal, but things would be like popping up over it. So like if you're walking down a street, maybe like you have like your Maps app and it's like, this is what this restaurant is and here's all the ratings and reviews from it. And like that kind of a thing would be what we're talking about with augmented reality.
Right. Yeah. Things popping up. And where I think this will get really interesting is if facial recognition really gets better, which it has been. You'll start to be able to see people's social profiles popping up and, just all kinds of things like that. So there's going to be some really wild, like futuristic stuff that's going to be happening. And it's all possible and available now. And it's probably already in development.
Well, it's a good thing, like things like GDPR and like the California law are coming into effect because of think of like how many terrible things people can do with that technology, but also think of how many awesome things you can do with that technology. And like I was thinking, like I was reading a blog post with somebody who was talking about what could possibly happen with it. And just like with my garage door example of like, if the garage door is open late at night, it's like, it'd be interesting if they had an AR thing where it's like on Monday nights when I need to bring the garbage cans out, if it's 9 o'clock at night and I haven't brought the cans to the curb yet, maybe like in the corner, like the cans are glowing orange. So like if I happen to look over towards the garage where my garbage cans are, it's like I can see through the wall like this glowing orange can, and that would be like a visual reminder of like, hey, you need to go bring your garbage cans out. It's like doing those kinds of things that can help aid your life instead of necessarily being like, hey, here's a way to sell more crap to you as you're walking through the mall. Like, I swear, I would take my glasses off so fast if I was wearing them walking through a mall, because I like that's like where they're gonna move with it.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a thing. So we'll just have to see how that plays out. But there's going to be a lot more focus and development on it coming up in the future, which is the whole point of this show.
Exactly. Yeah. Like this year with augmented reality, it's like we're not going to get to that stage with glasses yet, but I think this year we'll probably see more. Like Apple has been investing a ton into those tools, and when you see the investment that they're putting into it, you can tell that they want developers to skate to where the puck is going to be. So I guess as it relates to where technology is going to go in the future, it's like, think about how you can use augmented reality within your app, and then try to find a way, like, maybe with a smartphone, it doesn't make sense to have, like, if you look at parts on a machine, having like being able to read each part of it and pull up a manual or whatever for it. It's like, you're not going to do that necessarily with your phone, but if you build out that technology now, think about as soon as we have like glasses or whatever in a few years, it's like, we could use this time now to skate to where we think it's going to be.
Yeah, there's a lot of possibilities with it.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, it is.
As is all of these predictions. So, final thoughts. Do you think 2020 is going to be a big revolutionary year, or just another kind of incremental slow step forward?
It's going to be a complete blockbuster.
It's going to be revolutionary. You won't believe what's coming in 2020. This is the year of the flying car.
Every day is going to feel like an Apple event.
Steve Jobs himself will come back and deliver keynotes every day.
In augmented reality.
We'll have like the Prince holograms of people performing. Yeah, it's going to be that with augmented reality.
You want to have coffee with Steve Jobs? Go ahead.
He'll say the same 4 things, but you'll love it. No, I don't know. 2020 will probably be another incremental step forward in the never-ending chain of progress.
Yeah, I don't know what will happen, but I'm excited to see what happens, that's for sure.
Well, then why did people listen to this episode if you don't know what's going to happen?
I have no idea. I don't know anything.
That's the whole point of this. Well, thanks for wasting everyone's time, Rob. That was great. Thanks for joining me on the podcast again.
Bye.
We'll see you in 2021. So thanks again for checking out our podcast today. Show notes for this episode can be found at constantvariables.co. You can get in touch with us by emailing us at hello@constantvariables.co. I'm at Tim Bornold on Twitter. Rob doesn't really post ever anywhere, so you don't have to worry about him. But our show is found on Twitter and Instagram and all the places. Just search for Constant Variables and look for that cool album artwork and you'll find us. Today's episode was edited by the tantalizing Jordan Daoust. This episode was brought to you by the Jed Mahonis Group, who builds mobile software solutions for the on-demand economy. Learn more at jmg.mn.